African-American farmers and the land. And in that book, there is a chapter that's dedicated to the difficulties that Black farmers have experienced in connection with the United States Department of Agriculture. And these are troubles and experiences that have been shared by socially disadvantaged producers throughout the last 100 years. And certainly steps have been taken in the past to respond to specific acts of discrimination. The settlements during the Obama years is an example, but there's never been a comprehensive effort to earn the trust of socially disadvantaged producers at USDA. I think the American Rescue Plan, with President Biden's leadership, is an important first step in that process. Certainly, the president laid out a clear vision of his desire that we begin that process. He certainly had help in getting the American Rescue Plan through the Congress, and certainly the provisions relating to socially disadvantaged producers were the work in large part of Senators Warnock, Booker, Warren, and others. And on the House side, Representative Clyburn, Bishop, Thompson, Butterfield, and many others made sure that this was an opportunity. The American Rescue Plan was an opportunity for us to begin the process of taking that first step. I'm really excited about today because through the hard work of the folks who are on this call and many others at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we are now in a position to begin the process of actually implementing the debt relief portion and section of the American Rescue Plan. You'll remember that the Congress directed the Department of Agriculture to provide resources, sufficient resources, to pay the debts of all borrowers who are borrowing money directly from the United States Department of Agriculture, all socially disadvantaged farmers, and that those that had their loans guaranteed by USDA would also be included in this debt relief effort. Today, we put the finishing touches on what we refer to here in Washington, D.C. as a Notice of Funds Availability, a NOFA. This is an opportunity to indicate that we have received permission at the Department of Agriculture to begin the actual process of relieving these debts and providing farmers an additional 20% of the debt in cash to be able to pay for any tax liabilities that may accrue as a result of this debt forgiveness. Let me explain what's going to happen now. The NOFA will be approved today, and then it will be sent to the Federal Registry for public notification. That notification will take place sometime early next week. At that point, the USDA will be prepared to begin the process of producing a letter to each of the borrowers, each borrower who directly borrowed money from the USDA, each socially disadvantaged producer who may have borrowed money for a farm ownership loan to purchase a farm operating loan to essentially operate the loan, or a farm storage loan. Letters will also be sent initially at some point in time to those who also have guaranteed loans. The direct loan borrowers represent roughly 85% of the universe of these socially disadvantaged farmers that are benefiting from the American Rescue Plan. They number roughly around somewhere between 11 and 13,000 borrowers. Then there are another couple thousand additional borrowers who are having their loans guaranteed. The letter will essentially lay out that it's the Department of Agriculture's direction to forgive the loan. It will contain a specific amount of the loan, principal, interest, and any fees that are involved, and ask the farmer to make sure that that number is correct. If it is correct, we're going to ask the farmers to essentially sign a copy of the letter and return it to the Department of Agriculture. And upon receipt of those signed letters, acknowledging we had the right calculation of principal, interest, and fees, the United States Department of Agriculture will issue a check in the amount of 20% of the amount stated in the letter. As I said earlier, the purpose of that is to provide resources to farmers to ensure that they are not put in a difficult situation because of tax considerations. If farmers, for whatever reason, disagree with the number, if they feel that the United States Department of Agriculture has failed to calculate it properly, they obviously have the opportunity, and will set forth in the letter, how we go about making sure that we ultimately reach a consensus on the number for that individual farmer. At that point, once the letters are received, and sent back to the Department of Agriculture, we'll begin the process of eliminating the debt and releasing the liens that may exist and that were provided as collateral for the debt. It may be a mortgage on the land. It may be equipment liens and other security interests. We'll also make sure that farmers are aware of the ability to access information and technical information about the tax consequences. We want to make sure that people understand and appreciate that this is in fact a taxable situation and that there will be a tax that will have to be paid. For those who are still operating the farm, there is the opportunity to average their income over a 3-year period. So if they had a large amount of income because of debt relief in 1 year, they can essentially spread it out over a period of 3 years and reduce their tax burden. We want to make sure that people have access to that kind of technical information and kind of direction and guidance. So either we'll encourage them to talk to their own tax preparer, or we may provide information concerning community building organizations that can provide that type of information. We're going to take care of the direct loans first because they represent the largest group and probably the least complicated. There are complexities involving guaranteed loans because we're not dealing directly necessarily solely with the borrower. We're also dealing with the bank. We're asking the banks to provide us information concerning any prepayment penalty that may be owed as a result of this debt being paid sooner than the bank anticipated. Now, some banks have raised concerns about this, and the reality is banks charge a prepayment penalty for the very purpose that if, in fact, the loan is paid off prematurely, they are made whole, if you will, by virtue of the fact that they have assessed this additional penalty that has to be paid. It's the decision that we've made at USDA to also pay that prepayment penalty in addition to the loan, in addition to the interest that may accrue. So hopefully the goal here is within the first 120 days or so that we have most, if not all, of the direct loans paid off, and we've begun the process of working through the guaranteed loans. The goal, obviously, is to get as many of these loans paid off as quickly as possible. And certainly the expectation is by a late fall, early winter, we're going to have all of these loans basically off the books. This is an incredibly important step, but it is a step. And it's important to emphasize this, and then I'll turn it over back to Will. It's an important step because it provides an acknowledgement of the cumulative effect of discrimination and the fact that socially disadvantaged producers did not have access to the full range of services at USDA throughout history. It has created a gap between those who had full access and those who didn't. A good example is the recent COVID relief bills, which provided a substantial amount of help and assistance to farmers generally throughout the country. We know from a subset of that group that received help that self-identified in terms of their race and ethnicity. We know that roughly 25% of the farmers receiving the benefits of COVID self-identified. And we know of that universe, white farmers received roughly $5.5 billion of help and assistance, while black farmers, for example, received only $20 million. So there's a significant gap that needs to be addressed. And fortunately, the American Rescue Plan also begins to address that issue as well. In addition to the debt relief, it has directed us to establish an equity commission. And we're putting the finishing touches on the charter of that equity commission, and we'll begin over the course of the next several months of going through the process that we have to go through in order to establish such a commission pursuant to congressional direction. That commission, we hope, will have its first meeting sometime in the fall. Their job will be to take an external look at USDA to try to identify any systemic barriers that might exist that currently make it difficult for socially disadvantaged producers to have the full array of benefits from USDA, and they'll make recommendations for change. At the same time that's going on, we're also persistent and consistent with the President's executive order on equity. We are also having an internal set of working groups looking at the very same set of issues. So we'll have an internal look and an external look. We'll also begin the process of utilizing the additional resources from the American Rescue Plan to figure out ways in which producers can access more technical assistance so they can access more easily the programs that we do have, look for ways in which we can expand market access for socially disadvantaged producers, and also begin to address the issue of how they might be able to access additional land for their production activities. We will also make sure that we get the heirs property rule, which has been hanging for the last couple of years. Didn't receive much attention during the previous administration. We're going to get that rule out in the very near future, which is also going to provide a mechanism for the financing of fractional interests of land that need to be taken care of and addressed. So I hope everyone who was on this call understands and appreciates that we are very serious about this. We are very focused on it. We're moving forward, and with the president's leadership and the vice president's leadership, the support from Congress and the great work of the men and women at USDA who are dedicated to this mission. Several of them are on this call today. We're going to move forward, and hopefully people will begin to develop a bridge that ultimately leads to a USDA that's working for all producers and keeping them on the land and hopefully increasing their profitability. So with that, I will turn it back to you and to Zach and Dwayne for any additional comments.
Excellent. Thank you, Secretary. We'll now turn it over to Farm Service Agency Administrator Zach Ducheneau and USDA Senior Advisor for Racial Equity, Dr. Dwayne Goldman, to provide some additional context here, as well as some additional next steps for follow-up as well.
Thank you, Will. And I'll lead off and let Dr. Goldman, who's far more eloquent than I, close us out. For the last 20 years of my professional life, I have worked from the outside of the Farm Service Agency, advocating for how FSA should do things. And as the Secretary said, this is a great first step. And I look forward to being able to lead the agency with the support of Secretary Vilsack, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and everybody else at the USDA towards that new vision where our socially disadvantaged producers feel welcome. They're eager to come to that Farm Service Agency Service Center. We're going to start to change the culture of the entire organization. And we're going to help our staff understand unconscious bias, which the Secretary has talked about several times, and help them understand the reality of the producers that are coming in that have felt the brunt of that unconscious bias. And I just cannot explain how excited I am to be part of this team, how thankful I am to the Secretary, to the administration for allowing me to be part of this momentous occasion. And I was going to add some details, but the Secretary covered everything so well, I don't think there's any need to add more. I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Dr. Dwayne Goldman.